Hello! I'm Elaine, and I'm a tour guide in the French Quarter. I do ghost tours. And I am not going to tell you the stories that I tell on my tour, because you gotta pay for those. But if you want to hear some interesting things that have happened to me while I'm leading random drunk people around the French Quarter, I got you. Originally, I hadn't planned on telling y'all any of the actually vaguely possibly could be paranormal events that happened on the ghost hunt, because in my mind, those stories were for people who paid for the ghost hunt. But the thing is, I'm not doing ghost hunts anymore. So I have no qualms in telling you. I'm going to start out by saying, do I think that place was haunted? Maybe. I am a very shy person when it comes to ever actually saying whether I think something is actually ghost. Like, do I believe ghosts exist? Yes. Do I believe that 90% of what people think are ghosts are actually something else? Yes. And that place, like, a lot of the stories that I knew about it, I didn't believe in the least. Like, some of the stuff that the owner had told us, some of the stuff that other people had experienced, I didn't believe them. But there was something about it. And part of it is ghost hunts are sort of set up to make you feel creeped out. Like, the way that it's set up, you're going to think you see something sometimes, which is why I was always very, like, strident about make sure that other people are seeing what you're seeing. Make sure this is not your imagination. But enough things happened randomly that I felt like, yeah, there might actually be something there. But so one night, I had a group that was a full group, like fully booked out, 12 people, and for the entire night, nothing had happened. It was one of those nights that you're just sitting there talking into an audio recorder, running out of questions because you're just like, hello? Is there anybody here? And not getting anything that you could even pretend to get excited over. And near the end of the night, I could tell everyone was super done, but nobody had said they were done yet, and I never wanted to be the one to say, hey, are y'all done? Because I didn't want them to think that I was trying to rush them out. So I was like, okay, I guess we're gonna go upstairs as a group and do one more EVP session. And I take the entire group upstairs, and we have what was called a spirit box, which if you've ever worked with one, they are basically audio, like radios and audio devices that you remove the element that makes it stick to one channel. So it's constantly cycling through every channel on like the FM or the AM or whatever, and you can set them to different speeds and different like frequencies and stuff like that. But the thing is, the idea is that between the stations, in the static, spirits could use that energy to, give you information, to talk to you. And I will say, I generally believe that spirit box stuff is BS. You're hearing the radio. Or your mind is taking that static and turning it into something that sounds like a voice, which is why I always told people you needed to have multiple syllables, long enough that it clearly was covering across 4 or 5 different channels. It needs to be something that multiple different people realized it was a word, and they all realized it was the same word, and it needed to be clear enough that somebody who was not there could hear the same thing. And that night, we were playing with a spirit box, and what I always did at the end of each session was I would always end with saying, and is there anything else you'd like to tell us? Mainly just as a good conclusion, but also partially just in case there were spirits there. I wanted to be polite. But that particular night, just because I wasn't thinking about it, the way I phrased that question was, is there anything you've been dying to tell us? And of course, I immediately realized that's a hilarious question to ask on a ghost hunt. So I was like, oh God, sorry for that bad joke. And clear as day, all 12 people in the room insisted they heard it, and they all burst out laughing at the same time, so they all heard it at the same time. Swear to God, we heard the word stupid. Which I still love, because I get to say that I was called stupid by a ghost. But one other event that happened, there was one night, it was a Halloween night, and Halloweens, as you can imagine, ghost hunts tend to get busy. We were booked solid, like I think we were actually overbooked. We were like at 13 people. And my coworker, the other ghost hunt guide, was like, hey, do you want me to come in to help? And honestly, I wanted to say yes, but it was his only night off. So I was like, no, I can handle it. It's fine. It's fine. And he had said, okay, well, I might stop by later on the night just to check to see if you need an extra hand. And I was like, cool. And as the night progresses, I haven't seen him. I'm like, oh, I guess Michael's not coming. But at one point, I have the three groups separated. One group's upstairs, one group's out in the courtyard, and one group's inside with me. And I'm chatting with the people inside when we hear the door open. And we all sort of turn to look, but we're doing a ghost hunt. It's in the dark. You can't see anything. You just see, like, the shadowy shape of a person walk by. And I saw the, like, cherry end of a cigarette, like the lit bit of a cigarette. So I was like, okay, that's Michael. And he walked straight past and straight into the back courtyard. And I was like, okay, I'll finish up what I'm doing with these guests and I'll go talk to him. And I talked to those guests for a few minutes. Then I went back outside and Michael wasn't there. And I was like, Michael, what? Where? And I went upstairs and he wasn't up there. And finally I went back inside with the guests that were inside. And I was like, guys, is Michael in here? And they're like, no. I was like, y'all saw him come in, right? And everyone in the room had seen something. A couple people just saw a shadow of a person walk by. One person also saw the cherry into the cigarette that I had seen. And one person could describe Michael pretty damn clearly, which is impressive because they had not met Michael Bill. And, like, the next night I was talking to Michael Bill. I was like, Michael Bill, what the hell? Like, you came in but disappeared? And he was like, no, I got sick. I went home. I never came in that night. So that might have been paranormal. But my favorite thing that has happened to me on any of the ghost hunts, the story that I tell the most commonly, there was one night I only had 3 guests, 2 people who were a couple, and a third person who was unrelated to them. And it was another one of those nights that was slow. Honestly, I think the best things tended to happen on the nights that were otherwise slow as death. And one of the girls had announced she was sensitive, but then had never said anything else the entire night about it, which I will admit just gives me more belief in someone, because it shows that they actually believe it and are not just like trying to convince everybody else. But we were finishing up that night, and we went upstairs collectively as a group, and the couple were sitting on the bed. I was sitting on the far end of the bed next to them, and the other guy was leaning against the far wall. And we are doing one last EVP session without the spirit box, just talking into the audio recorders, and one of the guys, the guy leaning against the wall, gets the hiccups. Now, I jokingly say, like, well, maybe the spirits can help with that. And so he gets up into the middle of the room, turns his back to the door, and faces us and says, if there are any spirits in here, I dare you to jump out and scare me. See if you can startle me. See if you can get rid of my hiccups. And he's not even done speaking when me and the girl who are sitting on the bed both gasp at the exact same time. Because I swear to God, there was a 6-foot-tall shadow standing right behind him. And this was very clearly not his shadow, because he was a rather short man and the shadow was very tall, but also the shadow wasn't against a surface, it was in the middle of the room. But also, he had nothing on his head, like not even hair, the man was bald. Yet this shadow was wearing a broad-brimmed hat. And at the exact same moment we gasp, this guy jumps and screams a little bit, and we're like, oh my God, you saw it too. Because objectively, 3 people seeing the same thing on a ghost hunt is almost unheard of. It is magic. And this guy, when we asked him, he was like, no, I didn't see anything. I felt a hand rake down my back. But at least his hiccups were gone. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and feel free to share your own experiences in the comments below.